Welcome, everybody. Rob here from NoBS Photo Success. We'll let people get in the room. This is our weekly live stream broadcast where we have timely talks on strategies, marketing, and inspiration for photographers, by photographers. And we have with us, Mr. John Butler and our very special guest, Mr. Robert Nowell, all the way from St. Catharines. Rob, thank you for joining us today. We're really excited. Before we get into any discussions, I just want to mention to everybody that I had an interview with Rob, was it 2 years ago?
Yes.
And it was a very, very good talk. A little over an hour long. It was part of my mastermind series. I put the replay on that in the Facebook group if anybody's interested. So grab it. I posted it this morning to time it with today's discussion. And of course, the replay of today's discussion is also going to be in the Facebook group. So you just got to be a member. It's free. It's open to the whole world, and there's some top quality information there. And to me, in my opinion, there's nothing like having these discussions with other photographers on what they're doing in their industry, in their photography business, and all sorts of other ideas. And you never know what deep, dark rabbit holes or back alleys we'll go down. And John, we've been down a few. So speaking about rabbit holes, Rob, I'm going to just come right out and ask you. We were having a bit of a discussion prior to going live. So we were, and the big question we always like to ask is has to do with lockdowns, specifically lockdowns for photographers and that. And you had mentioned that you're sort of plugged into the industry. You're now a full-time professor, maybe at Mohawk College. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that as well, sort of update us on that. And what have you been, what's the sense of where things are insofar as the general attitude for photographers on lockdowns? Those of you who are from anywhere else outside of Canada, you should know that we are still in lockdown. And probably, what do you figure, John?
I'm saying at least first week to second week of July.
Yeah, and it's crazy. I haven't really worked since February. So every day is a struggle insofar as trying to keep my sanity, let alone focused. And I'm in a fortunate position that almost 40 years I've managed to save money and I have no debt, and so. But, chewing away at those savings. But the hardest part for me is the struggle of waiting every day. It wears very thin after a couple of months. So anyways, it's not about me. Rob, what is it I think you also got a quote you're going to share with us, if we can get into that too before I forget. So
Yeah. So, over the years, I've been educating photographers in different ways through workshops, through my business partner, Brian Caparici, he and I did a thing called Enlighten Me even before Sprout ever got started. That was all about educating photographers. And it was all about educating photographers on the business of photography. Mm-hmm. We weren't trying to teach them how to, take a better picture. It was how to run a better business. The thing, looking around recently, looking at the industry, and I'm in touch with lots and lots of photographers in Ontario. Mm-hmm. And, I'm hearing some are really hurting badly, like some are suffering, and some have actually talked about getting out of the business altogether. Mm-hmm. And the question to my mind is, so what business are you going to go in that isn't affected by COVID? Now, it is true that during other big, massive, problematic times, lots of brand new businesses got started and have become very successful coming out of really bad times. But COVID's a very different beast. I think there's a very different effect from COVID when it comes to making a living, because even restaurants had to pivot really quickly. Suddenly everything had to be curbside or delivered, and those businesses are all hurting, and lots of those have closed down. So I think also it's true that there are some photographers. Those that were doing really well and doing everything right prior to COVID are managing to make it through COVID, and they're going to be able to pick up and where they left off and kind of make it work.
Right.
Those businesses that were playing at business, I think are really they're finding it impossible basically.
What do you mean by that, Rob?
Playing at business. Okay, so I've often thought that you have to have the right combination of factors in play to be successful in this game that we call photography business. And that is, you have to have a strong understanding of the craft, and you have to practice the craft, and you have to literally never lose the desire to make your photography better than it was last week. I love a quote by Jerry Gionis who says, you don't have to be the best photographer in the world. You just need to be better than you were 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. I love that. That's good. That's words to live by. But in addition to having a great portfolio, you also have to have a very strong sense of business and a very strong sense of marketing. You have to be a networker. You have to be a good communicator. I've often said with photographers that I've coached, if you can't articulate your value to a customer, how do you expect any customers to articulate your value to others? That's the thing, is a lot of photographers don't know. Like if I were to say, what is it that you bring to the table? Like, what is it that makes you stand out? There's so many photographers out there, and we talk about this all the time. It's an overly saturated market. But I would challenge photographers that think that way, that say, well, so tough to make a living in photography today because it's a saturated market. Mm-hmm. My take on that is this. It's a market that is saturated with mediocrity. You have people that are running mediocre businesses. They do mediocre marketing, and their portfolios are mediocre. And that's what I think our market is saturated by. So if you want to be successful in this business, this industry, and I think it's completely doable, you have to focus on your weaker areas and say, okay, like what do I need to work on here? It's not good enough to be just a great photographer to take amazing pictures. That's not going to make you a successful living. It's not good enough just to be a great business person. You can be the best business person in the world, but if your work is crummy, no one will care, right? So you have to understand that there are many facets to making this work in a way that will give you a sustainable living and be able to be something you can, make a sustainable career that is something that will last your whole lifetime. Like you should have a plan for your business, but you should also have a plan for your life, right? A lot of people, they come up with a business plan, but then their life ends up revolving around their business. So these are the people that become workaholics. They can't seem to ever, take a vacation because the business would just die if I stopped working. That's not realistic. You have to be able to recharge your batteries. So I always would say to anybody who's thinking about rebooting their business, like after COVID, I'd say, well, the first thing I would suggest you do is make a really solid life plan. Like, what are your life goals? And then when you make the life plan first, then you can make a business plan so that your business works around your life goals and your life plan instead of the other way around.
Agreed.
So, it's, COVID just was a slap in the face to all of us, right? It was like,
definitely,
boom. I feel actually sometimes almost guilty. I say this to my wife a lot. I'm extremely blessed in that serendipity and the timing of me deciding to go full-time as a professor happened literally the year before COVID happened.
Okay.
So if I hadn't made that choice, I would have probably been seeing really reduced revenues just like everybody else. I wouldn't have been in dire straits. I'm married to a teacher. She's she's still working. But it would have been tough. It would have been a much tougher year.
Yep.
For sure.
I know with my business, it's been that way too, because I have a brick and mortar store or studio too. So it's been rough, but we're getting through it. Like you said, if you planned ahead of time, you can weather the storm, hopefully.
And that's the thing is, even in the planning, it's not a one-time plan. It's a constantly pivoting, constantly evolving plan that has to adapt to whatever's going on. You have to see the signs ahead of, even if it wasn't COVID, one has to think about, the economy and, what do people value? What do people want to spend money on right now? Yeah. Do people see photography today the same way that they looked at photography 15 or 20 years ago? And I don't think they do. I think there's been some big consumer differences and trend changes. Yep. So I think photographers need to make sure that they're not living, with their head down an ostrich hole, but they're constantly looking at other businesses and what's going on around them in the economy as a whole, basically.
Constantly evolving, because you can't stand still. Soon, it's like any business. Once you stand still, you get stagnant. People are going to pass you by. So you just got to move on and move with the times, as you say.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny. Like I love teaching. This is something I've done. Actually, I taught part-time at Niagara College when I was really getting my business going in the early 1980s. Because I love teaching, and back then I was teaching film photography. We were in the darkroom processing films, all of that. And I did that for, I think, close to 12 years part-time until my kids came along. And then I decided it was like too much to be working all day and then going off somewhere at night as well. So so I gave it up for a while. And then I guess it was in around 2007 that I started teaching part-time at Niagara College in their brand new full-time photography program. And I just went, oh gosh, yeah, I forgot how much I love this. And it started to coincide with my changing life plan and business plan, where I started recognizing that I was not going to be booking the same weddings that I had been booking because I was getting older. It seemed like to me like the brides were getting younger. But somebody said, no, the brides aren't getting younger, Rob. You're just getting older. I'm like, oh, right. It occurred to me that there's going to come a time when brides are going to look at me and say, I don't think I'd want him for my wedding day because he's kind of more like my dad. Right. And I can't relate to a photographer that's the same age as my dad. And I just sort of recognized that that's the trend. And so I started noticing that bookings were changing, and I wasn't getting the 20s brides in their 20s anymore. What I did find was I was getting a lot of second marriages, a lot of older couples who had waited a long time to get married. They were professionals. They had like their own home, everything. The good thing about that was they had a ton of disposable income on their wedding budget. And so photography was not an issue for them, which was great. But I also realized as I was getting close to the 35-year mark that weddings are exhausting. I've loved shooting weddings all over the years, loved them, but they're exhausting. And I wanted my weekends back, basically. I just made a conscious choice to say my lifestyle has been such that my wife has been at too many barbecues by herself on weekends. And I don't want to do that anymore. So I just made the conscious effort, and it was hard, trust me. I'm going to say no to weddings from here on in. And that's when I decided I was going to lose a revenue stream from weddings, and I was going to replace it with headshots. Now, people laughed at me, and they said, well, there's no way you're going to be able to like make as much money on headshots as you did on weddings.
You'd be surprised.
And I would say, well, that all depends on how you go about your headshot business, I'd say.
Exactly. It's almost like you and I went the same direction, because I'm the same. I was doing weddings for 10, 12 years, whatever, back in the film days all the way in. And then a couple of years back, my wife and I decided we don't want to do weddings anymore, because my wife helps me here. She's not at the weddings, but she's in my back office, basically, doing my behind the scenes. And I said, I just don't have the fun with it anymore. Like you, I'm getting older. I'm almost 50 now. And like you said, it's all 20-year-olds and early, and they want different things. And I love the shooting part. I never, knock on wood, I haven't had a bridezilla yet this day, but they all wanted, now I'm finding they want more for less. And it was getting to the point that I wasn't willing to go and sacrifice a whole 12-hour day, plus all the prep and all the after effects for as little as they wanted to pay. It wasn't worth it. I wasn't having fun anymore. So I did the same thing. About a year and a half, 2 years ago was my last wedding. And I do headshots and corporate work more often nowadays. And like you, I can make just as much in 1 week maybe doing a headshot as I could doing a wedding possibly.
It's pretty incredible how that has become a bit more of a niche business than it used to be. People used to call me for what they called a business portrait. I need a business portrait. Whereas with the coming of social media, everybody needs a decent, not just a decent, but a good brand headshot. For LinkedIn, for Facebook, for Twitter, for whatever you need it for. But pretty much everybody seems to need a headshot these days. So that's just sort of opened the floodgates. But again, like anything else, there's a lot of people who think that they're delivering a quality product as a headshot, and it's really not much more than like a mugshot. It's like getting your license photo taken. They don't realize the nuance of what it takes to elicit a great shot for somebody as a headshot. So that's something I agree. I took that very seriously. I ended up joining the headshot crew with Peter Hurley.
I love Peter Hurley. I'm actually getting ready to join the headshot crew myself.
Well, you'll be interested to know that Peter Hurley is coming to Burlington this August.
Oh, I did not know that.
He's going to be doing, just announced, so he's going to be doing a 2-day intensive, headshot intensive.
Yep.
Now, they're not inexpensive, but definitely worth the investment for those that are serious about it. So
definitely, I use his triangular pattern on all my headshots mostly. In that, I love his stuff. And I see we got Rob back. He lost his internet. He was trying to get back in there, but he's back.
It just died.
He's back.
This never happened before.
Yeah.
But no, I'm the same. Like you said, I enjoy what I'm doing now. And like even Neil Copeland, he wrote in here that he's glad he retired after 40 years as a photographer in January 2020, just before COVID hit. He had been quit shooting weddings 6 years before that, and his sports T&I business had been slowing down for a few years before that. He would not want to be in the team and individual business using that tools that most are gravitating towards nowadays. And I'm probably one of those because I've been using a company called NextGen out of the States there, where we actually now shoot, especially COVID's drove us this way. Yeah. We shoot each person individually against a white background.
Yeah.
And then we send it to NextGen, and they will actually crop them out and put them in a team picture and and stitch them together. But it makes it easier for me, and my parents are loving it. We did it this year for 31 hockey teams that we had to do. It was the only way to do it right here, and they loved it. They got the images back, and they can't believe when you look at them, it doesn't that all those kids were not shot together. They were all shot separately.
Yeah.
It's the way you got to do it.
And that's a good way to pivot, right? It's like you can still make this work. It's just done in a different way. And and I've often thought that that's really what we are as photographers. You know, I say that to my students all the time. Forget the word photographer. What you are is a problem solver.
Yeah,
that's what you do daily. You solve problems. It might be a lighting problem. It might be actually a relational problem, like you've got somebody in front of you that's just terrified of the camera, hates getting their picture taken. That's a problem you need to solve, and it's not an easy one, right?
No, I have some grad photos I got to do tomorrow. We're actually doing outside in a tent because we can't do any indoor shots right now. We can only do outside with up to 5 people, and I'm one of the 5. And one of the parents actually told the school that her daughter, I guess, had a bicycle accident and lost one of her front teeth. So can you tell the photographer that when it's time for her picture, not to try and make her smile showing her teeth because she's very self-conscious about it. So
well, that's an easy fix, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll just draw in another tooth. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. just shove a chiclet right up in that spot. That works pretty good.
Exactly. But it's good to know that stuff. But yeah, things are just crazy now. I mean, you just got to think outside the box. So and Rob, what you missed, basically, I don't know if you were listening to it while you were off. He
didn't hear a thing. So
he basically was talking about how he left the wedding industry a few years back and how he's went more into headshots and things like that. So
I see. Where we are. Rob, I got a question for you.
Sure.
But I do see a lot of headshots on your website and on your Instagram account and what have you. So
can I share how that happened?
Sure, go for it.
I think your listeners would be interested in that.
Sure.
So my way of deciding that I had to suddenly get well known in my community with headshots really quickly was by going through all of my LinkedIn contacts and going through all of the people I knew on Facebook that were in different kinds of businesses in my community. And to be completely honest, I was looking for people that I thought and would be pretty photogenic, right? They didn't necessarily have a great headshot on their space right now, but I knew that they would be someone that would be great in front of a camera. And I basically put out, I think I chose like 12 people the initial time. And I basically sent out a letter to 12 people and said, look, I'm about to pivot in my photography studio to offering headshots, shot in a new and different way than I've ever done them before. And I'd like you to be a part of this experience. It's a win-win situation for you and me. You're going to get a beautiful, amazing headshot, fully retouched, no charge, no strings. All I'm asking is that you allow me to use your photo that I take in all of my marketing online.
Wow.
And I sent that out to 12 people and I got 12 yeses, like literally within 24 hours.
Wow.
And so I was able to almost immediately start pumping out fresh new work onto my Instagram account. And by the time I have about the 9th person on there, I already received my first inquiry for a new headshot directly as a result of that Instagram posting. So that's something, even though I don't actually need the material like that the way I did when I was starting, generally once a year now, I will throw that out to 2 or 3 people. Just somebody I know would be a good influencer for me. Mm-hmm. And I'll offer them a free session. because it's a win-win for them and it's a win-win for me because they get a great new headshot and I get somebody on my site that other people notice.
That is amazing.
Very smart.
It's been absolute gold for my headshot business.
That is amazing. I got two questions coming to mind. You got to help me on this one. So the 12 that you booked, did you make any money off of part of them or any of them or none of them? Or was it strictly for networking, which obviously is a strategy that works?
Yeah,
obviously.
to be honest, it was never a goal to make money from this. My goal was for them to have the best experience getting a headshot they'd ever had in their life.
That's a great goal.
And of course, that elicited some Google reviews immediately. Boom, 5-star reviews right away for headshots, which was fantastic.
Just, sometimes you make money because they want extras and whatnot, or you might book a family session. Did any of that happen?
And if I were to do the same thing differently now, I would do it differently. Mm-hmm. But I was basically saying to them, you're gonna want this one headshot. I wasn't talking 2 headshots, 3 headshots, 4 headshots. I kept focusing on you're gonna get this amazing one headshot. And I told them what the value was. I said you're getting a $250 value coming into my studio. We're gonna spend an hour, blah blah blah. Now I've changed it up now in my pricing that for $250 they'll get two final images, but at the time it was one.
Okay, wait. Sorry, I hate to interrupt.
Yeah,
because you're talking pure gold here. This is amazing. I want you to emphasize for everybody listening and for myself and for John the importance of pre-qualifying the value and coming right out and saying it.
100%.
It's worth $250. You're giving it to them.
I'm giving it to them. It's worth $250. If you're coming to my studio on your own, you'd be paying $250 for this experience.
And they're like, well, all I got to do is let him use my headshot?
Yeah, pretty much.
And now, before I forget, I'd like to segue this topic into another topic to do at headshots, but we'll get to that later. It's more to do with the psychology of posing. But, okay, so you said you changed your pricing, and are you still giving away these freebies for, obviously you just mentioned for select ones you'll do that.
For select people, there'll be somebody that I'll notice and I'll go, oh, you know what, I'd love to have them in my portfolio. And I'm not going to sit around waiting for them to call, so I just call them. And I'll let them know. It's like, I've chosen you because I would like to have your amazing face on my website, and
that's awesome. It's a great strategy because people love to hear that.
And the reality, guys, is it's not false flattery. I mean it. Yeah. This is completely sincere and genuine, and they're usually pretty chuffed to hear me say that. Mm-hmm. And so it's great. And then I'll say things like, I would love for you to sort of, if you want to sort of talk me up a little bit in your social media, maybe tell people what the experience was like. That'd be awesome. Yep. And they usually do, which is fantastic.
Now you go in with this promise. You're going to get this value. It's worth $250. Yep. But you also tell them flat out you want to give them the most amazing experience.
See, if you can't deliver on that most amazing experience, then you better not promise it.
So what is an amazing experience? According to Robert Nowell.
Okay, so
you get photographed by Robert. There you go.
Yeah, well,
how does it play out though? Because there's a reason I'm asking, and I'll get to it in a minute.
So the reality is this: is that everybody's got a camera. Everybody knows their f-stops and shutter speeds. Everybody can take a picture, and then people can basically, backwards dissect lighting. They can figure out how other people light and everything. There are really no secrets in this industry, as far as I'm concerned. There's only techniques, and I'm never afraid of competitors. It never bothers me when like somebody else in town says, "Oh, I'm going to be the next headshot guy in town." I'm like, "Great! There's going to be more of us. Wonderful," because you're going to do it your way, and I'm going to do it my way.
Yep.
And I'm not stupid enough to think that I'm going to get every single customer in all of Niagara. That's just not realistic. I'm going to get the people that value what I do, who I am. Those are the people I'm going to get. And I'm going to get probably their friends because their friends listen to their friends. Right. People trust their friends. And when they come to my studio, I want them to think of me by the time they leave as a friend, basically. Like, not that we're going to, go out for drinks all the time, but I want them to understand that when they come in, I see them and I take time with them before, like, we don't even walk into the studio until we've had a good conversation. Like, that's super important to me.
Okay.
And one of the things I always like to do is I like to say, so, I'm curious to know if you're one of the people, and there's there's a huge pile of people that say I don't enjoy getting my photo taken, and then there's a smaller pile of people that say I do enjoy it. I'm just wondering which pile you put yourself in.
You actually asked them that?
I do. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Because just sort of interrupt, but this is the point I wanted to get to, because I've noticed that what you just said, those who hate having their picture taken, that seems to be a cultural phenomenon that's been going on, versus say when I started out in the 80s and 90s, where people were like different, their attitude, way less fears, more confidence, and or at least respect for the process of we're going to get a good headshot done. Now they come in and they always tell me, I'm so scared, like as if they're giving me information that's going to help.
Which is ironic considering this is the age of selfies.
Exactly. And I tell them that, I say I blame social media and cell phones. So anyways, sorry, I hate to interrupt like that, because you're on such a golden thread here. And
so what we do is I'll say, like, well, tell me what it is that you would like to de-emphasize. If you're saying I don't like myself in pictures, what would you like to de-emphasize? And I say, what do you think your best attributes? And we go back and forth and talk a little bit about that. And then I say, do you want to know why a lot of people are so hard on themselves in photographs? And they'll say, sure. Maybe they're being polite. I don't know. And I'll say, well, it's actually a little bit of interesting psychology. And I do this, by the way, not just in headshots. Every single portrait I do, I make time to talk to people, and I always bring this up to them. You have to understand that each and every one of us is conditioned from the time we can stand up and see ourselves in the mirror. We are conditioned to see ourselves opposite to how we really look. And so when we see ourselves in a photograph, it's like you've taken the negative and flipped it backwards. And we look at that picture and say, there's just something wrong about this. I can't put my finger on it, but it just doesn't look right to me. And it's because you've been conditioned since you were like 4 years old, brushing your teeth, combing your hair, checking yourself out, shaving. You know, this is how I look. And it's not how you look. It's a reverse image of how you look. So when you see yourself in a photo, you're always a little critical because you go, it doesn't quite look right to me.
And you have that convo with everybody.
I have that conversation with every single person that comes into my studio. And I say, so you have to understand that you need to take it easy on yourself. This idea of being self-critical of how we look, it's not our fault. Like, we're just so used to seeing the reverse image of ourselves that we believe that's how we look, but it's not how we look. So when your friend looks at a picture of you and says, that's a fantastic photo of you, and you go, yeah, I'm not keen on it.
Right.
You have to trust your friend, because they're seeing you how you actually look every day.
I love
right?
it.
Yeah.
And that's an epiphany for some people. It's like, oh my gosh, I've never thought of that before. I've never heard that before. And it's sort of this little golden nugget that has served me well for the last 35 years.
Well, think about it. When somebody comes up to you and says, oh, I see you've lost a lot of weight. If they haven't seen you in, say, 6 months, and then they see you, and you probably didn't even notice it. You're like, really? I really didn't see it myself. I see myself every day. But they see you once every 6 months. They can tell the difference from the last time they saw you.
And then I always make sure during a shoot to take as many pictures as it needs to sort of break the ice and get them through their sort of, what I say, putting walls up.
The barrier.
Yep. Once the barrier comes down and I get my first great shot, I make sure I show it to them right away. I say, okay, I know you don't love getting your picture taken, but you got to come to the back of the camera here and take a quick peek at this. What do you think of this? And I wouldn't say it's 100%, but I'd say it's a high 90%. Okay. Where they come around to the back of the camera and their jaw drops and they go, oh my God, that's amazing. I have never had a picture like this. And I go, we're just getting started. So now that you've got your confidence up through the roof, let's go get some amazing pictures of you.
Yep.
And you literally see a physiological change in the person. They stand a little straighter. They're coming in. They're laughing. They're smiling. They know they've got this. And it just makes the sessions magical.
I used to do that in film days. I used to work for a company called Muscle Mag, where we used to do bodybuilding, fitness, and swimsuit. We'd take them on the beach in California, and I'd be shooting away. And the model, it's not a professional model. These are just normal people. I just want to get some beautiful pictures of themselves. Yep. And we'd be shooting for 5-10 minutes, and then they're getting into it, and you can see they're relaxing and they're having fun. I'm like, okay, let's put the film in. And they're like, yeah, okay. I'm like, no, honestly. And I would actually open the camera and show them there was no film in the camera. I said, okay, they hated me at first, but then once the pictures were done, they loved me after, because I wasn't going to waste all that film on duds to throw away, because film was expensive back then.
Yeah. That's one of the big benefits of digital now, right? It's like, I've got 900 images ready to go here, so let's take some pictures.
Yeah.
So we are conditioned to see ourselves opposite.
Yeah.
in that conversation prior to, and obviously showing them the first great shot after the barrier. Anything else that you talk about during that conversation? Because I feel that part of the process is so important. At least 50% of the success or the thing that's going to lead to success in what's going to happen, which is the actual shoot.
Right.
It's psychological. This is all psychological. You got to get these people, right?
And I think when you say like what is it, what is it that you're able to do, and how do you show your value? This is the thing that for me is important when my people are doing a Google review. Is I want them to be able to articulate what the value was.
Right.
Here is why I went to Robert Nowell. Yeah, right. I got a great picture, but also I was impressed with how professional the studio premises was. I was impressed at how prepared he was for me when I came in, and that he called me by my first name continually through the shoot. I was impressed by the fact that the shoot was over before I knew it. It was like we had so much fun. Little things, like you want a great tip for headshots or portraits. Shoppers Drug Mart sells these little packets of oil-absorbing tissues. Any photographer that's had to try to retouch blown-out highlights because of facial shine will thank me for this. Okay? There's nothing harder than trying to get a blown-out forehead because it's super shiny. You just can't get detail back there, right? So you can try to clone stamp or patch tool or whatever the heck you want to do, but it's really a bitch to try to get that where you want it. And what I do now is every single client time, mostly for men, because men don't wear makeup and women's makeup generally takes care of this. But for men, I always bring them into the bathroom here, and there's a mirror and a vanity and everything. And I'll say, okay, you see these little blue tissues here? I say, it's going to make the difference between a fantastic, great headshot and a good headshot. What I want you to do is take 3 or 4 of these tissues, and I want you to blot your forehead, just pat it on there, go down the front of the nose, on the top of the cheeks, and what do you got there? Shine, shine, go away. Is that the cream?
Nope, this is actually just the pads.
That's the pads, okay. Yeah, so I use the little blue tissues, and it's absolutely...
It's like a little tissue.
Cool. Yeah.
It's like a blotter.
Yeah. So they're at Shoppers Drug Mart.
Yep. I got them. They sit with my passport printer, and I use them for passports too because you don't want any shine. And you just, like you said, you just take this paper and you just wipe it. And I don't know if people can see that, but
yeah, there's dark oil on there.
Everybody has oils on their face.
And you'll probably have to do it maybe once or twice during the shoot because it comes back that fast sometimes.
And it even comes with a little pad too that you can
stick it to. But the men actually prefer this than the idea of having makeup done.
Yep.
Most men don't love the idea of makeup getting done. So you say, hey, all you got to do is use these little tissues and it's good as gold. So
I bought this at Shoppers Drug Mart, I think. I think that's where I got this, was Shoppers Drug Mart.
Yeah.
As soon as you were talking about it, I didn't mean to be rude and walk away, but I wanted to grab it.
I thought, wow, he's going to get a coffee. So yeah, it's just one thing layered on top of another thing. It's like making sure that I've got some water here if they want that. I've got some different juices. I've got coffee ready. I've got tea available. When people come in, I don't want them to think that I'm going to whip them in and out of here, because it's just a headshot.
Yeah.
And also the other thing that's important is pre-educating them before they come. I make the booking easy, so I've got online scheduling and all of that for them to book, and you can do all that through Sprout Studio. But also, I send them education. It's like, what makes a great headshot? Well, number one, you should have solids, no patterns. Here are the colors I recommend for men and women. And then I'll say things like, men, you should probably shave, at least 3 hours before coming in for the session.
So you don't get the razor burn.
Women, please don't get your hair done the day of the session. It tends to be sort of too helmety, typically. Then we just give them all these wardrobe tips and everything else. We even tell them about parking when you come to our studio. So there's all this pre-session education that I think a lot of photographers are skipping on. They're not bothering with that stuff. They're like, here's my address. See you at 2:00. And the people come in and it's like, they don't know what to expect. They don't know what's going on. Did I wear the right stuff? Because if you don't tell them, they won't know. So if you're giving them the benefit of all of your experience, your value has just gone up 10 notches in their eyes, even before you've clicked the shutter.
Yeah.
That's smart.
Yeah.
It shows you're an expert in your field. That's what they want.
And then, of course, there's the old, I don't really like the term under promise and over deliver. I would rather just always over deliver. I don't want to get into under promising anything.
That's a good point.
So typically they'll say, well, when will I see my pictures? And I'll say, oh, we'll have your gallery out to you tomorrow. And then literally when they leave the studio, I sit down and prepare the gallery in the next 10 minutes and shoot it off to them.
Yeah.
And that's a template. So I hope no clients are watching right now. It's actually a template email that goes out, but it says, I had so much fun at your session and I was so excited to show you these photos. I couldn't wait till tomorrow to send them to you.
Aha.
And so they're getting the sense that I'm as excited about this as they are.
It's a bit of a white lie.
Which is not really, because I want them to post this picture everywhere and tell all their friends how amazing this experience was.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And this is the thing I find interesting about this is because, and I do owe this to Peter Hurley, before taking some of his really solid instruction and getting really deeply involved in his headshot crew, I used to look at business portraits as kind of bread and butter. It was kind of a pain, People would come into me and it's like, oh yeah, sit down. Well, I never have anybody sit down for a headshot ever. They're always going to stand.
They're always standing when
always
you're posing?
Standing. Well, better posture. There's a whole bunch of reasons for that. Better posture.
I'm the same way.
They can breathe easier, all kinds of stuff. But I look at every headshot now as like this ultimate challenge. I've got to do better than I did on my last headshot. And the reason for that is that 35 years into the game, I'm still competing. So when you join Peter Hurley's headshot crew, you can enter headshot of the week competition every single week, and you can enter a headshot of the month every single month.
Right.
Now I've won both a headshot of the week and a headshot of the month.
Did you win a printer?
Actually, they weren't giving really big prizes back then, so I think that's a COVID thing right now. But it was motivating. It was motivating to be in a community of people doing the very same thing you are, and we were becoming a little bit competitive. And it was extremely motivating for me to up my game and get even better at it than I did at the last shoot, which is crazy when you think I've been doing this for 35 years. How much more can you do with light, or how much more can you do with your technique? You can never stop learning. Period.
Yeah.
True.
Right?
I love it.
Yeah, I love Peter Hurley. I watch his stuff all the time. I do. Rob always asks me, "What's that triangle lighting kit you're doing all the time?" I'm like, "It's a Peter Hurley kit."
Well, and you know what? You don't have to invest in all the heavy duty stuff. He's got his own lighting called the Flex Kit and all that. But if you've got reasonable lighting, you can do it. You can do anything.
Definitely.
You probably got away with two lights, main and a kicker. My background too, but so. I want to ask you, did you give us that quote yet, or
I did not.
About
but
Newman? Okay.
Just so I don't get it wrong, I've got the book right here. So this is the book I have a slight obsession. I have a bit of a problem. My wife looks at me every time there's a courier at the door, and she goes, "Is this another book? We're gonna have to reinforce the house." I have an obsession with coffee table books about photography.
Okay.
I love it.
If you go to my Instagram account, there's a thing called Inspiration.
I'll go find it.
And I typically post the books that I've purchased.
There it is.
And then you can see how obsessive I am. But this one is Arnold Newman. And this was produced for his 100th, what would have been his 100th birthday. And there's a quote in the back from, if you're familiar with the photographer Gregory Heisler. Gregory Heisler is an amazing portrait photographer. He has a book called 50 Portraits, and he basically breaks down and explains his mindset. It's not like f-stops and shutter speeds, although he'll talk about what gear he used. But he talks about the mindset behind every photo. It was amazing. So anyway,
which one was that again, Rob?
That's Gregory Heisler, and he's a phenomenally interesting person to listen to. He's a very intelligent, articulate photographer.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, here's the quote. Arnold Newman said this. No, this is Gregory Heisler saying this. "I recently had an epiphany regarding some of my photo students. They are more in love with the idea of being a photographer than with actually making photographs." Arnold Newman was in love with making photographs. It was obvious. As he photographed, he was absolutely fully engaged, completely absorbed in the task. I love that because it took me years to get to a place where I started to understand the importance of business in this thing to be successful, like making a living, paying your mortgage, putting away retirement money and all that. Mm-hmm. But from the very first day, I have always been absorbed and possessed by photography as an art form. Mm-hmm. And I'm 61 now, and I'm in a place in my life because of my exit strategy to be able to sort of not have to do my business full time after 35 years. Because as you all know, and I did, that doesn't change. Like, it's still a tough grind every day, right?
Yep.
That never goes away. And I began to start to think about, what am I going to do in the last 20 years of my career? Am I going to be working all summer again? Am I going to doing this? I now have grandchildren. I have 3 grandchildren. I want to spend time with my grandchildren. I want to go vacationing. I want my summers free. I know there's a lot of things that I wanted to do. But one of the things I wanted to do was I wanted to start doing photography that I wanted to do and not just what my clients wanted. I wanted to be able to say, this week I want to create something for me. I'll put it on my website. Whether people like it or not, it's irrelevant. This is for me. And I've had some fun with that because I've been able to sort of pick a famous photographer and sort of say, okay, I'm going to try to figure out that person's lighting. I'm going to try to emulate their lighting here, or I'm going to try to emulate this particular style. And it's really been fantastic. And I've actually gotten work from it. That's the crazy part. I wasn't even expecting. So recently, here's the thing. Recently, I created a portrait in the Platon style. And I posted it. And I got a call immediately from a marketing advertising agency. And I know this girl. I've worked with her in the past. And she says, I just saw that portrait that you posted. We have a team of lawyers in town that want to redo their website, and they want all new portraits. And we're thinking, we don't want to do the normal regular portraits. We saw that thing you posted. Could you do that for these lawyers? And I was like, I'd love to. That'd be amazing. Black and white photography with a wide angle lens for portraits. Are you kidding me?
That's the guy who shot for that major magazine. There's a documentary out on him.
Oh yes. It's on Netflix.
Right.
On the design thing, there's a thing on Platon there.
I saw that image in your Instagram or on your website, and that's exactly what I thought about. I thought about that picture of Obama that he created, and
exactly.
Always. Do you want to go find it, John, and show everybody?
I'm trying to see if I can find it. Is it on your Instagram?
Probably. Let me think here.
I love that.
I wonder if it's this one here. I think I might have found it.
It's on his website, top left. There's an older gent in a suit.
Yeah, that's one of the lawyers, actually. Yeah.
I love that idea of the way you're shooting. Just to get technical for a second, the fact that you're shooting it.
Wouldn't be that one, is it?
That's not it.
White backdrop with strong shadows. I've always thought that.
So if you scroll, okay, there. See this girl right here in the black and white in the left? Click on that for a second. So this is Albert Watson lighting. Okay, you know Albert Watson?
No.
He's well known for the picture that's on the autobiography of Steve Jobs, or not the autobiography, the biography of Steve Jobs.
All right.
But Albert Watson, he's got one of those master classes. He's Scottish. He's brilliant. His work is absolutely incredible. But I watched a video of him doing some lighting with some Profo lights, and I thought, geez, I just love that technique. I want to go do that. So I rented a studio in the Cotton Factory in Hamilton, and got some big black V-flats, and I brought a lot of my own lighting, and I just searched around for people I knew, and I remember this girl had done a fitness shoot with me years ago. I called her up and I said, I'm doing some experimental stuff. Can't pay you, but you can have images if you want images. And she's like, oh, I'm up for that. So we did that, and it was a hoot. It was a blast. And I just get like, that'll last me for like 2 weeks. I'm on a creative high when I go out and try something like that.
Right.
Because the headshots are fun. They're challenging. I get to talk to people. I get to meet a lot of people. But it's not the same because it's a formulaic kind of lighting. It's like headshots is very formulaic now for me. I want to get people in the zone. So I want to make sure I get them in for this signature look that they're going to get. But every now and then I think, okay, now I want to break away and do something completely different. Yeah, there it is. Yeah. So that's a Platon style.
Can I ask you what millimeter lens you're using? You said wide angle, which completely defies all logic, by the way.
Yes, it does. So
is it a 24?
Well, no, now you got to do the conversion factor because it's a 63. It's not super wide, to be honest. I could have gone wider, but it's a 63 on a Fuji GFX 50S, and that's a medium format digital camera, right?
Yeah.
So it's a 63, which
About
probably puts
35?
it at about 45,
Okay.
35, somewhere in there.
Almost in the standard range, almost.
Yeah, almost getting there. But the key
Almost
here
what the eye sees.
the key here is to come in low
I
and
see
to come in close.
What light are you using here?
This is it's strange to believe, but this is a single light. This is just against a white background, and it is a shoot-through umbrella. That's it. It's a shoot-through umbrella coming from upper left.
Shadows are very dark. There's no
shadows are left to go dark. There is a little bit of bounce. There's a big foam core, 4x8 foam core on far right, but it's a good 6 feet away, 7 feet away from him. But the umbrella is very close to him.
So the lawyers like this.
Well, some of the lawyers like this.
Yeah,
here's the funny thing:
What happened?
the men loved it. The women hated it.
Really?
The women, you got to think about this, right? The women
It brings
are
out the texture in the face.
the women are thinking like, well, what's this going to look like for me? And granted, on some of the women it looked amazing, and on some of the women, you know, if you're a woman who's maybe a little not exactly svelte, and you're in your mid to late 40s, you don't want this kind of portrait done.
No, it's going to bring out all the wrinkles and
everything.
everything.
This is a character portrait. This is a
Yes.
character portrait. And the funny thing is that the marketing agency sold them on this idea. They loved it. And then once we got into the shoot, I had to reshoot one of the female lawyers at least 3 times before she was happy.
Why? Using the same?
No, it was basically, she says, I don't want this shooting from below. Like, I had a vision board set up on the wall in my studio, and I had Platon images all over the wall. There was shots, and part of that was psychological because it was all world leaders. It was like Obama, and it was Clinton, and it was,
Smart.
all these really important people, and it was to get them in the headspace that you're going to be as important as these people if you get your pictures done like this.
Right.
And it, for the most part, kind of worked, but there's still the factor of them seeing themselves like this, and it's like nothing they've ever seen of themselves, and some of them just couldn't get over it. So I had a chat with the marketing team, and I don't want to be difficult because it's like, well, these are not for me. These are for you. You got to be happy with this.
Yeah.
So I was able to pivot and say, okay, I can shoot some of these ladies from a higher angle. I can turn this backwards. Instead of shooting low and wide, I'll go telephoto and come in high, and you're going to love your picture.
Right.
So there ended up not being a sort of consistency that I would have liked in how these were used.
Right.
But ultimately, everybody was finally happy with their pictures. And I think that was ultimately more important.
So if you had to do this over again from
Yeah.
square one, knowing what you know now, how would you approach it? Would you say sort of, okay, I'm going to shoot all the women with a little bit of a twist to avoid those problems, and all the men are going to get this Platon look or something to that effect?
I think what I would have wanted to find out who calls the final shot here, like who's in charge, who makes this decision.
Right.
And I think the problem is that when it's just the lawyer and me in the studio, each lawyer that walked in there thought they were the boss.
So that's a problem.
And if I had had 2 of the senior partners in here during the shoot, and we had done everybody in the same day,
right,
with the art director from the ad agency,
right,
they wouldn't have stood a chance. Like, we would have just been able to do the shoot the way we designed it.
Just go with it, and
that would have been that.
We know lawyers don't have egos too, so.
I'll tell you, of all the clients, it's funny. I like lawyers. I've shot a lot of lawyers over the time, but
me too, yeah.
But I had a bride lawyer once that was a whole different story. Anyway.
Yeah, interesting. So, anyways, overall you created this. You were experimenting with this look. You did a few samples, and it turned into this shoot.
Yep.
You made some money, sales.
Yeah,
and it was positive in that respect. So you've added this to your list of experiences, and it's exciting. It's exciting.
I'm a big fan of this picture here. I love this one.
Well, this picture came immediately after I had just finished a very big shot If you scroll to the bottom of this thing, there's a group shot there, and it's a shot I did of 20 plus entrepreneurs. It was the Entrepreneur of the Year Awards in Niagara. So if you scroll right to the bottom down, keep going. Right there in the bottom corner. Yeah, click on that. So this is a shot that took me 54 hours in total.
Wow.
I actually logged my time on this. And 16 of the people in that picture were actually in the warehouse for the portrait.
Right.
And then 2 people, the guy in front of the ladder and the woman on the ladder, they came later that day when everyone else had gone. And then I shot them. And then the rest of the people came to my studio one at a time to be photographed and then inserted into the photo later.
Sort of like an Annie Leibovitz style.
Well, that's exactly what the marketing agency wanted from me. They said, we want a Vanity Fair style portrait of all these entrepreneurs. The guy who came up with Trivial Pursuit is in this picture.
Nice.
There's one from Brampton that made Trivial Pursuit too. I wonder if that's him.
No, this is
like
the guy
4
that
of them,
was
I
from
think.
Niagara. There was
okay.
3 or 4 guys that did it together. So there's winery owners here. There's real estate moguls here. There's a little bit of everybody in this picture.
Nicely done. Is this backdrop an actual backdrop or inserted?
Yes, this was So this person came to me and said, Rob, it's a big challenge. Can you do it? And I said yes, because you never say no. And then after I walked away, I was like, how the hell am I going to do this? Which is often the case, because we're problem solvers. I go back to that every time. There's always a way to solve the problem. Never say no if you think you can figure it out.
I want to be clear on how you approach this. So did you have the bulk of the people there and then you had to add people later, or were they all added individually?
Yeah. So about halfway through the shot and then go left, most of the people on the left side of the picture were there.
Okay.
And then most of the people on the right side of the picture were not there.
You knew you had to add them.
Yes. And then you have to recognize that you have to match the lighting. Right?
Yeah, no doubt.
And the thing that like this is shot in a big abandoned warehouse that's going to be turned into condominiums in my area here. Mm-hmm. And when she asked me if I could do the picture, I said yes. Can I be the one to choose where we do the picture? Mm-hmm. And she says, "Is this a game breaker?" And I said it could be. And so I pushed it a little bit, and she says, "Okay, you pick the location." And I said, "I want it to be in the old mill in Port Dalhousie." And she says, "Oh, funny you should say that. I actually have just started doing some marketing work with the guy who just bought it, and he's going to turn it into condominiums." And I said, "Well, there you go. It was meant to be.
It was meant to be." I love it.
And here's a funny story, if I can add this really quickly, is that 3 or 4 of these entrepreneurs in the picture, there was another award winner, an entrepreneur award winner, who passed away, and he used to own this factory. And it was incredibly nostalgic for these people who knew him and were good friends with him. They said, "Isn't it fitting that we're doing this picture in our friend's old factory?" And I just had no idea. I had no idea.
You called that one, man. You called that one.
It was amazing.
I love these stories.
We called Shaw Festival, and I said, "Shaw Festival, I need rugs, furniture, all kinds of things. Can we get this from you?" And the irony is you barely see any of it.
Yeah,
but it all came from the prop. It all came from the prop warehouse from Shaw Festival, which was amazing.
What's the dimension of that? It almost looks like a 16:9 or something.
I have a print hanging in my studio. It's a 40-inch wide print, and that's how I sold them, by the way. So at the gala where we celebrated these award winners, I had this on display on an easel, and it was a 40-inch wide print, and I just made it known that this is available for sale for any of the people in the photo that want to buy it. And I set the price pretty high, and I've sold quite a number of them. And
you made money. You can I ask you about the money? And I don't want to know specifics if you don't have to disclose it. But I was just going to come out and ask you. So how much did you make on this? Put 55 hours on it. But did the sales you made afterwards? The initial fees? Not knowing you're going to spend 55 hours on it, I'm sure that was a bit of a surprise to you.
Yeah.
Did you feel well compensated for it? And if not, later on, did you by far make enough to sort of say, you know what, that turned out to be pretty good?
I have more than made enough for this portrait.
Okay, good. It was a success.
It's completely a success. But I'll be very honest with you. Strange as it may seem, I was much more interested in the challenge of doing this than I was in how much money I was going to make from this.
Well, the money's nice, though.
It is, but also think of I never stop thinking of marketing and networking. These are the most important entrepreneurs in all of Niagara. And they were in front of me listening to me direct them for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And then they saw the result.
Yeah.
And now they know who Robert Nowell is.
Yeah.
So when they need a photograph of their Arabian stallion out on their ranch, guess which photographer they call?
You're the man.
Right? And it's like, I don't photograph horses much, but okay, I'll figure it out. I'll solve the problem.
You have, I'm going to guess, a minimum, a PLM or a 6-foot octodome to light this as your main light, no?
I MacGyvered this, to be honest with you. This is a MacGyver lighting setup. So I basically just used, I brought my Speedotron 2400 watt-second power pack. It's an industrial commercial power pack.
Is that the black line?
Yes. And I pumped the power between two heads. So I had 1200 watt seconds per head. And one was in a jumbo zebra umbrella. So it's got silver and white. So extra contrast, but not too much. And then I had a secondary large softbox because it's all I had that was big enough. So it's really weird. 2 different shapes, kind of looks awful. Yeah. But I was trying to make as big a light box as I could in that spot. But I also needed to feather the light across the group. Like, think about that, right? It's one light source feathering across a group that wide. That's a tricky thing. So we went the day before this, and we did lighting tests, and I put it out on Facebook that any of my friends that want to come and see the coolest warehouse in Niagara and get free coffee, please come and help me do this photo testing. And I need this many people. And boom, they all showed, they all started getting in touch with me, and I said, okay, come to this warehouse at 9 o'clock in the morning. It was freezing. There was no heat in this building. But I had enough volunteers to sit in all these positions so we could do all of our lighting tests.
Oh, really? You went to that extreme to make sure. You planned.
Okay. When you've got the guy who is flying in from Colorado for the photo shoot, and he's going to give you an hour,
you don't want to take any chances.
You can't say, well, hang on, I got to figure this out. Like, no, this has to be completely figured out before they even walk in the door. And I treated it like an Annie Leibovitz celebrity shoot. And so what I loved about this is we had other photographers we hired to shoot behind the scenes photos of this. Cogeco Cable News came and did a video of this shoot and interviewed all of these entrepreneurs. They interviewed me. It was amazing.
Nice.
Like, again, the marketing value, the marketing value from this shoot was unprecedented for me. People are still asking me about this.
And you had a lot of fun.
It was amazing. I brought some of my Mohawk graduate students to come and assist me on the job. It was an absolute blast from beginning to end. And this shot, as I said, this is the whole point of discussing this one, was the other one you brought up with the guy in the chair, movie light behind him. He saw this picture posted, and he says, I want a Vanity Fair style portrait for me. He's an RBC investment banker. And he wanted an executive portrait, and his wife set the whole thing up. And she basically told me on the phone, money is no object here.
All right.
You love when you get clients like that.
I said, well, I don't have a leather chair, but I would like to get a leather chair for this. So are you okay to get into like a rental and delivery charge for that? And she's like, whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. Get her done.
It reminds me, on Instagram, there's a guy I follow called John Gress, and he does that similar lighting, and he even has that same theater-like light behind them like that. He loves that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And what's a really cool little trick is that these lights, if you're actually using the Fresnel lights, they're extremely hot.
Yeah.
And they're like pumping a lot of light. You can just get an inexpensive LED movie light and then just put the orange gel over it and then just shove it inside there.
You're in.
And you're in, you're ready to go.
Yeah,
and then you'll see there's this little bit of smoky haze behind him. So I've got some of that atmosphere aerosol in a can.
Nice.
So you run in, spray that around, and
that's what I need, because I have too many fire alarms in my studio here. You put the smoke machine on, it's going to set them off.
Yeah, I love the atmosphere aerosol. You always do it last. It's the last thing I do on the shoot because it takes a while to clear. But it's when the client sees you going the extra mile and he sees how excited you are. It's like, oh man, you got to see how this looks in the camera. I just sprayed this haze behind you. This takes the shot to a whole new level. And he's like, okay, cool, whatever. I hope my wife likes it.
So you're really having a fun time focusing in on headshots and obviously group shots like the one you just showed us. This is the bulk of what you're doing these days.
It's yeah. Like I also shoot a lot of things. Like I have the Niagara Children's Center, which is for children that have all kinds of challenges and disabilities. Yeah. I do the campaign for them every single year. So our studio is completely handicap friendly. We've got main floor access. We've got auto doors. We've got all this stuff here. And so we have kids coming in wheelchairs, and I just absolutely love shooting that campaign. Things like that I want to do every year. I just love that stuff.
Yep. I think you talked about that a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So I think we dug into that topic.
It's so important to get deeply involved in your community. I know we're at the end of our time pretty close here, but a lot of younger photographers think that social media is only where it's at. It's like you have to be all out on social media. And I'd say social media is important, no question. But I believe that your community awareness level is more important.
That is gold.
You are not trying to cater to like the whole world. And social media is kind of like this global thing, right? I have photographers from Sydney, Australia talk to me sometimes. And it's like, that's great, but you're not a client for me. What I'm interested in is I live in the Niagara region, and anybody in the Niagara region is a potential client for me. And I'm much more interested in trying to reach people in Niagara than I am trying to reach people across the country, which I can do on social media. So I want to make sure that I'm hooked into things, events, companies, charities on a community level that raise my awareness to the community at large. I am the official photographer of the Niagara Symphony. So my logo, my ad is in their program, shown at every performance. My name is put on the screen before every performance. Thank you to our official photographer, blah, blah, blah. I've had so many offshoots from that connection alone. Pathstone Mental Health here in the area, I used to shoot all of their galas. Yeah. So whenever they brought in a celebrity, David Suzuki, I would do all the pictures for that sort of thing.
And you would do this as a community thing on you.
On me. Yeah. And of course, if there's costs, like they would sometimes have me photograph VIPs with the special guests, and they would always have to pay for the 8x10s and folders and things like that.
Yeah.
But I would donate my time.
I can't help but think when you look at that shot you did in the abandoned mill that's going to be condos, that group of people, I just look at them and I think, I don't think too many of them are doing the old Instagram thing.
No, none of them. Probably. Right? Maybe a couple of them because they've got some young student doing it for them. But
they got somebody doing it for them.
Somebody doing it for them. But they're the kind of people who would be like, oh, I got this big family event happening, and I'm going to probably need a photographer for that. What was the name of that guy that did our big group photo? Right? Yeah, they don't have to get in touch with one or two people to get that name back.
Exactly.
Right? So, and it was just... Here's the other thing about that. That kind of shoot, like my students were saying to me, they were behind me, and they were like, oh, I could never do anything like this. It's just so intimidating. These people are like such big shots. And I was like, what's so intimidating about that? Yeah. I said, you know what you should be intimidated by? How are you going to light this? That's what you should be intimidated by. Never be intimidated by the person you're standing in front of, because they're a person just like you are.
It's true. It's so true. The
highlight of my photography career was when I flew to Texas to photograph Phil Collins. And I admit being on the plane, shaking a little bit because I was thinking about who I was going to be photographing. I'm a big Genesis fan. I loved all his solo career. And it's like, oh my God, like Phil Collins. What? So I photographed him at the Alamo. Because Phil Collins has the world's largest private collection of artifacts from the Alamo.
Wow.
Really?
And he actually created a coffee table book of all these artifacts. So it occurred to me as I'm getting ready to go in the shoot with him that this is a guy who's big into history. So you know what I did when we got to the shooting? I told him I was from near Queenston, Niagara in Canada, where the War of 1812 was fought.
Nice.
And he immediately lit up like a firecracker and wanted to talk about history and the Spanish-American War. And it's like, we didn't talk about his music. We didn't talk about photography. We talked about something we had in common.
Nice.
I told him that I used to work in a museum in Niagara-on-the-Lake, and that people used to bring their cannonballs in from their gardens when they were digging.
Really?
And he just thought that was awesome, right?
That is awesome.
And it's just like, these are just people. These are just people.
Yeah.
And as long as you relate to them in a way that isn't like fawning over them,
yeah,
they'll be like ready to help you any way they can.
That is cool.
Yeah.
I love it. So we're gonna let you go in a few minutes here. I just got a couple of questions. I had a question from way back at the very start when you were talking about you pitching your 12 LinkedIn local models that you wanted photographed. How so my wife would go, no, you're not doing anything for free. How would you?
That's my wife.
Yeah, your wife too. So, and she had to listen to this to see the value of what it is you're talking about, because it's such a valuable strategy. And I've heard it from many others. And I literally, back in the 80s and somewhat in the 90s, built my studio based on doing freebies. So I totally love that. What advice would you give to somebody like me, but more specifically somebody who's starting out and they have a spouse who's like, no, nothing free? What would you suggest to them other than watching this and getting the big picture via?
It's actually simpler than you think. I would say this. Well, if you're just starting out, how much money have you got set aside in your marketing budget?
$100,
right.
$50.
So when you do that shoot for free that's valued at $250, how much did that actually cost you?
No, not a lot. A little bit of time, right? That's a good point.
So when you think of everything you do, like I'm not an advocate. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not an advocate in doing tons of free work. Like that. There's a limit to that.
Yeah.
But when that free work advances your business, it's no longer free work. That's part of your marketing budget. And that's how I've always looked at it.
I love it.
Is that I have a marketing budget. I actually do have money set aside in my budget for every year, knowing what ads might I buy, Google ads, Facebook ads, whatever I'm trying to do. But at the same time, I have sort of like this sort of negative marketing budget that says I would be willing to spend up to $2,500 in lost session fees if I think that that's going to advance my business.
Right.
And it's really money well not spent.
Yes.
However you put that.
I love that. Money well not spent. I love that.
All right, I'm going to give you some shotgun, machine gun questions here. Hurley, you know him personally?
I did meet him a couple of times at.
But he knows you?
WPPI, yeah, he knows me.
So
not super well.
If we fired off an email to him to get him in on one of these, we can drop your name?
Well, Ben Markham knows him too, so between the two of them.
Yeah, I don't know how well he knows me. Like he knows a million people, and then he forgets a million people's names as well.
All right.
Probably not.
Best Genesis album.
Best Genesis Foxtrot.
Okay, I like
I'm still Human Touch. I'm still Human Touch myself.
Yeah, it's not Genesis, right? Is it? I thought that was
that's Phil.
Or not?
That was Phil solo.
Yeah,
I don't think it is.
Solo days.
Is it? Okay. I'm talking Genesis back in the 70s.
Prog Genesis, right?
Yeah.
Prog rock.
Trick of the Tail was my favorite.
Yeah,
all right, your favorite movie.
Shawshank Redemption.
Nice.
Good, me too. That's my favorite.
Yeah, one of the top all-time most favorite movies of all.
Yeah.
Good choice.
Okay, well, we're going to wind her down now. John, do you have any final questions to throw at Rob? I really appreciate you coming on board. I'd love to have you back in a couple months. You open to that?
I'm totally open to that.
You are a wealth of inspiration and knowledge, and
thank you.
I love the fact that you're so open to share with everybody. And if I was, I usually tell people, don't take a photography course, take a business course. But if I were young or trying to recommend somebody who wanted to get into photography, I'd say go take the course at Mohawk, because you're going to be plugged into plugged into Rob Nowell there, and he's one of the main instructors.
And you got to see the work that some of these graduates are doing. I look at some of their work and I think, boy, I'd love to have that in my portfolio. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
So it keeps you young and inspired and motivated.
Really does. It does. I want to thank John and Rob. I want to thank both of you for having me on today. I've had a ball.
Thank you.
Been a blast, and I would love to come back anytime.
Hopefully you continue listening to other people that we got coming on here too.
Absolutely.
We got a good lineup coming. Rob's got a couple people lined up. I got one lined up. We got about 4 or 5 people lined up for the next couple weeks.
Sounds good. Can I do one plug before you guys leave?
Sure
Go for it.
I have a podcast now, and I'd love for people to check it out. It's called the Photo Pros Podcast.
Nice.
And I interview some pretty big names in the industry. We've got Art Streiber. We just did Jill Greenberg from New York City, and Flora Borshi from Hungary. Like people from all over the place. So
cool.
If you get a chance to check it out, it's the Photo Pros podcast.
I will put the link
right there.
Here it is.
I will put the link also with this replay in the Facebook page, and I'll send out an email to my list. So
sweet, that'd be great.
All right. Thanks, Rob.
My pleasure, guys.
We'll
Thank
talk
you.
soon.
All right, cheers.
See you later.